Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise today with a number of my colleagues to speak out against the Trump administration, EPA's Dirty Power Plan, a proposal intended to replace the Obama administration's Clean Power Plan. This proposal from this administration fails in at least two aspects. First, it fails to address climate change. And second, it will put Americans' health at risk. Mr. President, millions of American children are headed back to school in my state, in your state, states across the country this week, next week. All three of my children are grown, but not so long ago, we were sending them off to school, helping them with their homework, making sure they're getting good grades. As far as we know, they never brought home any failing grades. However, I can't say the same for the Trump administration with respect to this latest proposal. A friend of mine recently said if corruption were a class, the Trump administration would be getting an A+. Well, yet in just about everything else, especially public health and economics, the Trump administration continues to fail the American people almost every day. It's clear this administration needs to do a little remedial work, maybe take some courses again, especially in science, basic science. Let's be clear, the science behind climate change is settled. It's over. Climate change is real. It's happening. It's a growing threat to Americans, and it's getting worse every year. Climate change is leading to rising global temperatures, rising sea levels, and more intense and frequent weather events. NOAA tells us extreme weather events costing $1 billion or more have doubled in frequency over the past decade, with $425 billion in losses occurring over the last 5 years alone. That's $425 billion with a B over the last 5 years alone. It's now hard to find a part of our country that isn't being affected in some way by climate change. We see the examples almost everywhere. Not too far from my home in Delaware, it's a place called Ellicott City, Maryland. My wife was there with a bunch of her friends from the DuPont company. They're all retired now, and they wanted to go visit there and actually support the local people, local economy in Ellicott City, who've been through just terrible devastation. But in the last 2 years alone, two 1,000-year floods have devastated Ellicott City, Maryland, which is just north of Washington, D.C. 2,000-year floods in the last 2 years. Forest fires fueled by extreme heat and drought continue to ravage states like Montana, states like California, states like Oregon. Since we started keeping records, only 49 Category 5 hurricanes have threatened the United States. That's since we started keeping records, and I think we've been keeping records for maybe a century. 3 of those 49 Category 5 hurricanes occurred in the last year. Now think about that. 49 Category 5 hurricanes since we've been keeping track, and I think it's about a year. 3 of those in the last year. One of them right now is threatening the people of Hawaii. I could go on and on and on. But make no mistake, climate change is costing Americans. It's costing us in the form of lost income, lost livelihoods, and sadly, in some cases, lost lives. As someone who proudly represents, the lowest lying state in the nation, that's Delaware, climate change is not a science lecture for us. It affects my constituents daily. For us, this issue is personal, intensely personal. That's why I've worked literally my entire career here in the United States Senate to find ways to move us away from fossil fuels and to reduce carbon pollution. It all started in 2002 when I introduced one of the first bills in Congress to cap carbon emissions from coal-fired power plants. The good news is that we've made some progress in this country. That's in part due to the huge investments that the Obama administration and Congress made over the last decade in clean energy. It's also due in part to smart regulations, such as the Clean Power Plan. I proudly supported these efforts. I still do. In addition, many companies across our nation have stepped up, and they deserve some credit. For them, making real investments in clean energy has turned out, though, to be the right thing and to be a wise investment, demonstrating that it's possible, once again, to do well and do good at the same time. As a result of these actions, our country rebounded from one of its greatest economic downturns in history in the last decade. We've lowered the energy cost, reduced air pollution, and added 16 million new jobs during the Obama administration. And also launched the longest running economic expansion in the history of our country, which continues to this day. I've got a chart here. It says since 1970, the U.S. has cut common air pollutants by almost 3/4, while the U.S. GDP grew by not a little bit, but by over 200%. So instead of building on the Obama administration's forward-looking environmental standards, this administration has taken pride in tearing the protections apart. This administration's so-called affordable clean energy proposal fails to provide industry with the certainty needed to make clean energy investments for the future, while also providing an uncertain future for generations to come. Well, people say, at least where I'm from, maybe North Carolina, my wife's from North Carolina, she tells me they say this in North Carolina as well, Mr. President. But she says you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. And no matter what EPA calls this proposal by the agency's own account, it doesn't achieve affordable energy or clean energy, and it definitely doesn't address climate change. EPA's proposal, which I think might more appropriately be called the Dirty Power Plan, is instead another step by this administration to dismantle our nation's environmental protections and protect polluters over the public. If I were grading the EPA's proposal to replace the Clean Power Plant, I wouldn't give it an A. I would not give it a B, nor a C or a D. I might well give it an F, an F. And I take no joy in saying that. But that's the way calling balls and strikes, that's pretty much what I would call it. A friend of mine, maybe you have a friend like this too, Mr. President, but a friend of mine, when we ask him how he's doing, sometimes responds with these words: compared to what? Compared to what? Well, when compared against the Clean Power Plan, using EPA's own numbers, it's easy to see the Dirty Power Plan's shortcomings. And let's start, if you will, with the Clean Power Plan. Let's see, we got a chart here. It says the Clean Power Plan would create $54 billion per year in public health and climate benefits. Compare that to the Dirty Power Plan. Got another chart? And this one shows the EPA's own analysis, not my analysis, not the Democratic Party's analysis, EPA's own analysis of Trump's Clean Power Plan replacement. What happens to smog? Well, it goes up. What happens to soot? It goes up. What happens to mercury? It goes up. What happens to carbon pollution? It goes up. And how about premature deaths per year? Well, they go up by a couple, by 100, 1,000? No. Up by 1,400 premature deaths per year. That's enough for me to say no thank you, and to give the Dirty Power Plan a failing grade, But there's more. The Clean Power Plan would reduce household energy prices by $85 a year through energy efficiency investment. Clean Power Plan also provides long-term certainty for the U.S. businesses, helping American companies make smart investments at home and compete in the global clean energy market. The Dirty Power Plan does not help consumers save money on energy costs, does not provide businesses with certainty, and instead will likely cede clean energy jobs to places like, you guessed it, China. So let's just recap. When we compare the Dirty Power Plan over there in the red to the Clean Power Plan here in green. Cleaner air, clear winner, clean power plan. Saving lives, clear winner, clean power plan. Job creation, clear winner, clean power plan. Energy savings, again, a clear winner, clean power plan. Safer climate, again, clean power plan. And where I come from, we call that running the table. Running the table. Well, that's why, Mr. President, in my class, or if I were the teacher, if I were assigning grades, this dirty power plan would not get an A, B, C, D. It would get a failing grade. But let's be honest. EPA's dirty power plan proposal is not a climate change replacement. It is a retreat. Let me say that again. EPA's dirty power plan proposal from this administration is not a climate change replacement. It is a retreat. It is a retreat from EPA's most basic responsibilities to ensure breathable air. It is a retreat as well from EPA's most basic responsibilities to usher in economic progress and tackle the greatest environmental crisis that I think we face on this planet of ours. The Clean Power Plan, with its long-term certainty and flexibility structure, is the federal policy that moves us in the right direction, fulfills EPA's legal and scientific obligations to address climate pollution. Repealing the Clean Power Plan and replacing it with a proposal as ill-conceived as a dirty power plan will have serious consequences for the health of the public, for our economy, and for this planet in which we are entrusted. The American people deserve better than a dirty power plan, plain and simple. My colleagues and I are going to do everything in our power to make sure that happens. Let me close with this, Mr. President. Real quick, I see some of my colleagues are waiting to speak. I would say maybe 10 years or so ago, Mr. President, one of my colleagues, I think it was either George Voinovich or Lamar Alexander, were working on legislation to address four air pollutants: sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, mercury, and carbon dioxide. And we offered legislation in response to George W. Bush's administration's proposal. They called, the Bush administration dealt only with SOx, NOx, mercury, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, and mercury. They called their proposal Clear Skies. Pretty clever. We added to that carbon dioxide. We called our proposal Really Clear Skies. And I remember having a meeting in my office about a decade ago. And we had, in my office, we had my colleague, my co-sponsor, my Republican co-sponsor. But we also had representatives from 6, 7, 8, 9 utilities from all over the country. And we were debating, discussing whether or not the Clear Skies, the Bush proposal, or Really Clear Skies, our proposal, made more sense. And at the end of the discussion, I'll never forget what this one utility CEO said. He might have been from North Carolina. I know he was from someplace down south. And here's what he said to me. He said, Senator, he said to us, he said, Senators, here's what you should do. Tell us what the rules are going to be. Give us a reasonable amount of time, some flexibility, and get out of the way. That's what he said. I'll never forget it. Tell us what the rules are going to be with respect to air emissions. Give us a reasonable amount of time, some flexibility, and get out of the way. I think that's what the Clean Power Plan did. And we need to get back a lot closer to that proposal, because I think it actually mirrors and reflects the advice we received a decade ago. My time has expired. I thank my colleagues for their patience. I'm happy to yield to the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Flake.